One thing I always have to mention, or I feel I should mention today, is in this field of astrology, we all stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us and blazed their own trail. 10 years into my study of astrology, I came across a book at the Church of Light, which looked different than this, but called ABC Basic Chart Reading.
Yeah, I love that. Love
yes. A phenomenal life changer for me in my process of evolving as an astrologer. This book is primarily a thesaurus, but what I learned from this book was it might sometimes even be less about technique. Not how many things you can add to what you do, but how well you can express yourself in astrological interpretation that makes a difference. And that was the great lesson that Lynn, although I've probably only attended 3 classes of hers in the last 30 years, as a mentor or a teacher, this was truly one of the seminal books in my gaining skill as an astrologer. So I'm just telling you that. This is phenomenal. So we don't always know who we're mentoring, and especially when we write, we don't always know who our students are. And I just want to introduce to you Lynn Palmer. She may be familiar to celebrities, having hung out with the likes of Frank Sinatra and Ava Gardner, or with the Crown family of Monaco, or any other numbers of famous people. She's here with all of us notables today in our world, and in true Sagittarius generosity, Lynn has come here at her own expense and is donating her time as a fundraiser for the Church of Light. And this woman has written more books, she's done records, tapes, received awards, and that would really make this a very long introduction. So let's just give a really hearty round of
I want to say about that ABC Basic Chart Reading book. This is the last one he showed you. The AFA has now redone it. And I tell all my new students and everybody that if they have that book and memorize all the meanings of the planets, just read one planet a day on the harmonious and discordant side, then read another one another day. That way you can learn astrology, because astrology is nothing more than memorization. So if you know the meanings of the planets, houses, and aspects, you have it memorized. It's just putting it together is all you have to do. You put one word with another word, and there you have it. You know, it's easy. Well,
this is so easy.
It wasn't that way when I started. But with that book, I think is the best book that I've written as far as helping textbooks are concerned, to help people learn astrology. But we're not here to talk about that. Okay, 54 years ago, I went to the Church of Light in Los Angeles and started studying and teaching astrology. One of my favorite C.C. Zane books was Occultism Applied to Daily Life. And because you see, when I got into astrology, I really was kind of forced into it. I don't know if you people want to know how I got into it.
Yeah.
It's a funny story, but it's a true story. I was a dancer in show business, and I worked in Mexico, and I had a choreographer who was 30 years older than me, a Capricorn with Pisces rising, we later found out. And when I worked in Juarez, we stayed in El Paso, Texas. She would buy the astrology magazines. And we had to sit with the customers. She was a singer and my choreographer. And we worked in the same club at that time. And she would read the astrology magazines. And I started memorizing the sun sign stuff, But I really wasn't interested. But I started reading it anyway. And then all the forecasts I would watch, and I'd say, no, this doesn't work. This is no good. I don't believe in astrology. This can't be. This isn't any good. So she said, oh, no, this is very... I said, no, this didn't happen when it said it was going to happen. I'd save the stuff. No, that was all I knew. I mean, who knows? I never heard of a horoscope being done for somebody. I thought that in the newspapers was horoscopes, you know. My mother used to read the horoscope column every morning and tell us all about our sign, what it said for the day, you know, and then that was my next exposure. So I would sit with the customers. I was very shy in those days, and I had nothing to talk about. So I started talking about their sun sign, but I still did not want to be an astrologer, and I'd talk about it and that was it. And she would be at the table and listen, you know, and I'd tell people about their sign at the table, and that was it, between shows. Then we went back to Los Angeles, and she was rehearsing me for a big show to take to Mexico City. And I hated to rehearse. 1 hour with just the hand exercises, your hand, your fingers, the whole 1 hour of hands. 1 hour of my leg up to my head, my foot up to my head, splits, back bends, and all of that. 1 hour of that. And then the next hour, so there's 2 hours that have gone by. So the next hour was to rehearse, there was a blues number she was rehearsing me for. And she started doing the choreography and rehearsing me for this number. And so she stopped and she said, you know, you're really a lousy dancer. You should be an astrologer. Well, at that point, I was so tired from rehearsing anything, but I really wasn't interested in being an astrologer, but anything sounded good other than what I was doing. So I said, well, okay, where would I learn astrology? You know, but I wasn't serious, but she thought I was serious. And she says, well, let's look. And she opened the phone book, and it had Temple, and it had the Church of Light. She says, which one? I says, well, maybe the Temple I'll go to. But I really wasn't interested. So she called the Temple on the phone, and they weren't there because later we found out they only came in twice a week. So they weren't there, which was very good because it's a fatalistic system I would have learned instead of the positive Church of Light system. So she called the Church of Light. And the Church of Light answered, and they said, she said, being a Capricorn, she said, how much does it cost? So they said, well, donation, you know, quarter, 50 cents more if you have it. If you don't have it, you can still come in. Well, that sounded good to her. So she says, well, when is the next class? And they said on Monday night was a mathematical class, and that you could come in any time, you didn't have to enroll. So I thought, oh boy, what did I get into, you know? So I didn't even know it was mathematics. I just thought it was what I read in the newspapers and magazine, you know? So we went to the class. We went to the class that night, Monday night. It was over my head. I didn't know what logarithms were. I didn't know from anything. And I just sat there like a dumbbell. And finally, we left. And she said, wasn't that interesting? And I said, no. It's not interesting. So then she says, well, maybe it was the teacher. There's another class, the same type of class, another class on Wednesday night. And I said, well, maybe it was the teacher, maybe you're right, okay. So we went to the Wednesday night class. That was just as bad. So she went up to the desk. Doris Chase Doan wasn't on the desk at that time. No, she wasn't there. I hadn't met her yet. Somebody was on the desk, and they sold books, you know, or they had a library where you could rent books. So she went and she said, what books does she need? And I whispered to her, don't buy any because I'm not going to read them. So anyway, she bought them. And I didn't read them. She read them. And she'd say, oh, isn't this interesting? And oh, she was going on how interesting it was. And I wouldn't look at it. I said, no. She says, well, there's another class coming on Saturday, and it's an interpretation class. And I said, oh, I said, well, I really don't want to be an astrologer. I don't think this is the field for me, you know. She says, no, young lady, I think this is the field for you, you know. And so she says, but go to the one. I said, okay, I tell you what, I'll go to the one class, and if I don't like it, that's going to be the end. So I went to the class. Doris Chase Doan was the teacher. She had some movie stars chart up on the blackboard. And well, naturally, I'm in show business. Now it's movie stars. It's not mathematics. So it sounded more interesting to me. So I asked a few questions during the class, you know, and that was it. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. So Doris came up to me, and I know we were standing right by the bookcase where there was the ephemerides were there. So she said, introduced herself, and she said, what sign are you? And I said, Sagittarius. And she says, what's your rising sign? I says, I don't know. I've never had my chart done. And she said, well, what time were you born? So I told her, so she picked up the ephemeris and she looked it up and she mentally calculated my planets. And she said, you know, you're going to be a famous astrologer. I says, oh, no way. There's no way I am going to be an astrologer, let alone a famous one. And she says, oh, yes. And I says, oh, no. And she said, well, what's the problem? I says, mathematics. She says, well, I'll teach you. And I says, you will? And she says, oh, yes. So I says, well, maybe. Oh, well, okay. So then I found that, so I got the books and I started doing a million charts because I did them all wrong, you know. I had to do them over, and I'd call her on the phone, you know, and she would talk to me every day and tell me what I was doing right or wrong with the charts, setting them up, the mathematics. That was the month of April or May. Okay.
What year?
1957. So anyway, so then she would, and I found that I could study for 8 hours, and I hated to rehearse for 1. You know, I says, well, maybe this is the right field for me, you know. So then after that, I went. It was August came, and Doris said, "Oh," she says, "we have our new class schedule. We just sent out." And I said, "Oh, okay." And she says, "I put you in as a teacher." I said, "Me as a teacher? I just started there like April, May, and this is August." I says, "Oh no, I can't teach astrology, and there's no way I can teach it." And she says, "Oh, but you have to teach it, sent out." And I says, "What do you have me teaching?" She says, "The beginner's math class." I says, "Oh, I can't do that." And she says, "Oh, you'll learn as you go." So that's how I got into astrology. Wow. So then reading, then the books, you know, I have the little black books over there. So the books, you know, I looked at some and I thought, well, this is kind of way out stuff for me, you know, because I was a skeptic and I was never knew anything spiritual, or in that whole realm was all new to me. So I started, and so Doris said, well, why don't you read this book? I think Occultism Applied to Daily Life, you'll find interesting. Well, I found it so interesting that then I did the courses with that one first. But I did them out of order as what interested me until I got hooked, you know, and then I got so busy I never had time. So anyway, what I did with Occultism Applied to Daily Life, all of my friends and everybody I met, I bought them all the book. I bought everybody that book. I was so carried away with that book and what was in it. You know, it has very good information in it, you know. Like, if you want to stay young, think of children who play. They play, so you got to play. If you want to stay young, you got to have a playful, young mind. You know, there's just all kinds of interesting information in there. And so anyway, from there I got into mental alchemy and the rest. but it made logical sense to me, that book. You know, I have a lot of Virgo planets and Virgo rising, 3 planets in Virgo, Virgo rising. So it made it very interesting to read about all the things that made sense to me. You know. So anyway, so through the years, knowing astrology, I've analyzed people. You know, I watch people and I analyze them. And as I was telling, I'm not going into the whole story of yesterday, but there is a TV reality show, and I don't like reality shows, but there is one I got hooked on because my Virgo planets, it's reality, and I had seen one segment a year before, then I had nothing on, and when I'm taking the chart, I have the software, Church of Light, so when I take it off the computer and put it on a nice chart blank, everything, I watch television. Well, this particular night, there was nothing interesting on, so I turned to A&E, and there was this show called The Family Jewels with Gene Simmons and Tweed, Shannon Tweed, and his 2 children. And so he's a rock star Kiss, and I'm not into rock, his music or anything like that, but the show, I had seen that 1 year before, and I thought, well, that was interesting. So I started watching it, and then I started analyzing him because he didn't have much to say, but he was a workaholic. And I was saying, well, I wonder if he's Scorpio or Virgo. I wonder what he is. I wonder what his chart is like. So, and he was a man of few words because in it, she had to have him go to the psychiatrist. You know, it's a long story, but I'm not going into it. Anyway, so she would say, the psychiatrist would say to him, well, what do you think, how do you think Shannon felt about that? And all he'd say was, not good. So he would answer these, not good. He would never go into explanations on anything. Well, that aroused my Virgo planet's curiosity even more. So I had a friend of mine who's very good at, I'm not good with the computer, so I had a friend that's good with the computer. She gets charts for me when I want some celebrity's chart for a class or something. So she went and she got his chart. Well, anyway, then I had really fun watching the show because a lot of these reality shows I heard have been staged. You know, they make, because the producers or the sponsors say you have to have excitement going with fighting going on and all this other stuff. So a lot of it is staged and isn't real. So then I started watching everything he was doing with his chart in front of me, and it matched up. Perfect. You know, I said, well, he's a Virgo. He's got 6 planets in the 6th house, and he's got Aries rising. But and he never married her. Now they're getting married October 1st. The last segment showed him proposing, and she didn't give her answer. So then I got curious about her, putting 28 years with him and 2 children and not being married, and she was just as sweet and nice and friendly as could be. Of course, she cried during different things. You could see her crying easy, so you knew she had something in water. So I thought, well, you couldn't get a time on her, but she is a Pisces. And so I figured she might be a double Pisces rising too. But anyway, so now it's interesting because I heard on TV, it was announced on somebody else's show that they're getting married October 1st, because you never heard the final season show a few weeks ago, just showed him proposing, and she was so busy crying she didn't give her answer. Well, I had his chart, and I had his progressions. So I looked at him, I said, oh, they're gonna get married, you know. And sure enough, they're getting married October 1st, and then his new season starts up a few days later. So anyway, so that's what I do. When you have Virgo planets and you know astrology, you'll go crazy because you'll try to figure everyone out, you know. And so when you go, and then but the thing is, if you know the meanings of the planets and everything, you can go around and you can listen to people talk, you know, and you don't have their chart. You can tell what planet they're using when they talk in conversation. Once in New York, I worked for a man who did a lot of entertaining and big business deals with the government. So he hired me to go to this restaurant with these men. There was a new man he wanted to do business with. And he said, I don't know if this guy's a phony or not. I don't want to have to spend money and invest money. And at that time, $50,000 was a lot of money. That was 30, 40 years ago. So anyway, he said, I want you to tell, if you can tell me if he's for real or not. I guess he thought I was going to be psychic, but I was going to use the planets. So I sat next to the man. I listened to his conversation all through the whole meal. And you could see he had Neptune galore, you know. I mean, he was a wheeler dealer like crazy. So the guy that hired me got me up to the bar afterwards and said, well, what do you think? Should I do business with him? And I said, no, because he's a wheeler dealer and you might be conned out of money. Well, 2 weeks later, the man called on the phone and told me that he found out that I was right and I saved him all of that money. So if you know astrology, you can go around and you can listen to people talk or fight or argue or what, and you know what planets are in without having their chart. You can more or less tell. You don't know the dates they're going to start or peak, but you know what energy they're using at that moment. So the thing is that knowing astrology, it's good to know it because you can help other people. And my mission in life is to help other people, you know. And using mental antidotes, the Mental Alchemy book is a wonderful book. And using the mental antidotes help people. But there are people who don't want to use mental antidotes. You know, customers and people, they don't want to correct themselves. So I remember Doris Chase Doan always said, well, they're not ready. When they're not ready to receive it, they won't receive it. And so now I don't get upset anymore that somebody, and then they'll come back years later, well, I should have listened to you, but I didn't, you know, one of those. But it's because of the teachings of the Church of Light that can be very helpful to other people. Now, this talk is about learning to love our differences. And that was what Christopher called it. But when I was talking, no, thank you. When I was talking to him on the phone, I was talking about understanding the differences between people. So he called it loving. So then I said, well, okay, we'll leave it at loving our differences and understanding. So then I went to the dictionary and I looked up love besides romantic love, you know. And it says love, besides being the affections, it's a strong fondness or enthusiasm for something. It is the benevolence, kindness, or brotherhood that human beings should rightfully feel toward others. It's an expression of one's warm feelings, one that is liked or thought about, someone sweet and endearing. Loving means to feel love for, to like, to delight in, to thrive on. So I thought, well, that goes right along with what Christopher said, you know. And then I said, well, now I'm going to look up the word understand and see what exactly that has to say. So, according to the dictionary, the word understand is to perceive and comprehend the nature and significance of something, to grasp or comprehend the meaning intended or expressed by another, to know, and to be tolerant or sympathetic toward the needs, feelings, or views of another person. What makes that person tick, in other words? Of course, the dictionary didn't use that word. But anyway, astrology gives the answer of what makes a person tick. Understanding is individual or a specified judgment or outlook in a matter, your opinion, interpretation. So when you have the horoscope of somebody, you can see their chart, you can see how they're thinking and how maybe what they should think or how they can help themselves and what antidotes they could use. And you never know when you're out in public and you don't have people's horoscope. And how do you know if somebody's in a bad mood? You don't know what they're going through. So why should somebody dislike another human being? Just because maybe that person is going through bad aspects and doesn't know how to cope with them. doesn't know astrology, doesn't know mental alchemy, doesn't have the Church of Light teachings, so they don't know how to cope and what to do with all of this, you know? So this is why it's important to know the planet's energy they're expressing so you can help them, or if you don't help them, at least you don't get upset with somebody. For example, a person who's always angry and screaming at others, of course, we know that Mars, you know, energy. And if you are in the company of somebody, it could be a stranger, a friend, a loved one, how do you cope with their anger, you know? And do you feed into it by arguing with them? Or do you try to be diplomatic and calm them? Can you be understanding enough to be of help, you know? Regardless of how mean or wrong the person is, it won't do any good to feed into their behavior. It's not going to do any good at all. Kindness, you know, you get more with honey than vinegar. I always tell all my clients, get more with honey than vinegar. Be kind, and if you don't know astrology and you learn the expression of the planets, you can live a more harmonious life. You can be calm within yourself. You don't get upset with what people do or how they build up their burning up inside or burning with anger or anything like that. And you can use the antidote of the moon and be nurturing, you know, and caring for some helpless creature, but maybe they don't want to use that. The constructive side of Mars is like, go clean the house, do something physical. I tell people, look, if you don't paint, get an easel, get some paint, watercolors or oils, and throw them at the canvas. You know, use that energy creative if you want to get out that anger. Of course, if you clean the house, maybe you're going to, and you have Mars aspects, you're going to have an accident, you're going to hurt yourself in some way or another, because that can happen. But you can use physical energy instead of that. And so it's very important to see how a person is using the energy. Often misunderstandings occur because of lack of knowledge, you know, or afflicted Mercury in a horoscope, and the person doesn't know how to handle that afflicted Mercury. The other person, maybe you don't have their horoscope. When I'm talking about understanding and loving the differences of other people, I'm not talking just about clients that you have or friends or loved ones that you have. I'm talking about, like, if you go in a restaurant or you're on a bus or you're out where there's people or at meetings or anything else. I'm talking about people you don't know and don't have their charts, trying to get along with them. You know, if we can all get along and live a calm, peaceful life, that's the life to live. Because when you're angry, well, dis-ease comes from not being at ease, you know. It's coming from anger and holding grudges, all these other things. We'll talk about that this afternoon, more about those things. But anyway, so let's say that the person with an afflicted Mercury, there's misunderstandings occur. Now, I had a friend in Las Vegas. He runs errands for me and stuff. He's on disability. And he's a very nice person. Very kind, nice individual, doesn't drink, smoke, or anything like that. Just a nice, kind person. And people make fun of him, you know. One friend of mine, you give him a little money and he'll drive you around when people come to town. You know, my friends, if I'm busy working, I can't drive them. They hire him for $5 or what to drive them. And this one friend, she says, I think he's retarded, you know. And the other one says something, he's this, and he's not mentally right, and all these things, but they all say he's a nice person. They like him. So I was looking at his chart. And in his chart, well, first of all, he talks to me, and he told me he's never been ambitious, and he has Mercury and Pisces in the 3rd house of the mind. He has Neptune in his 10th house, and he has his Mercury only makes 2 aspects in his natal chart. And there is no connection with the moon from the subconscious mind to connect to the conscious mind, any connection. So naturally he might appear retarded and all that. When he was in high school, the principal told him that he could either quit on his own or be expelled, because he would read a book or read something, and 3 minutes later he didn't know what he read. So he could not do well in school at all, because there was no connection in that Mercury and Pisces. His mind was out of it, you know. Because I'll tell you, well, I have a client in New York. I'm going to transfer it. I had a client years ago in New York. A wealthy man had a son who was having trouble in school, and he had Pisces planets with his third house. I think it was Mercury and Pisces in the third, and he was having trouble in school learning. He couldn't learn. So I told him he was failing his grades. So this man had a lot of money, and I told him to see if there was a school in New York City that taught visually. And he found a school that had academic subjects and taught everything visually, as well as drama and acting and all that. Well, the kid didn't want to go there because he didn't want to leave his friends from school, but he went. And he loved it, ended up loving it, and he had no problem passing the academic subjects because they were all taught visually. You see, because of the Pisces learn visually with the third. Well, this guy in Las Vegas learns visually. He lives in Fantasyland. He goes to Disneyland. He could go to Disneyland from the time they open till the time they close for every single day of the year and never get tired of it. Never get tired of it. He watches movies. He watches movies, and everything he knows, and when you talk to him, it's because, you know, trying to get a conversation started, it's because he saw this in a movie that he can tell you all about it. And he remembers everything he sees in a movie. It's visual. Everything with Disneyland he remembers. And so that's how he learns. So what it is, he's a slow learner, and by progression, there hasn't been any Mercury progressions in his chart either until just recently. But he's got 3 planets by progression in Gemini. So he babbles. Everybody says he babbles. And all he talks, so all the people he drives around, he talks about Disneyland. If he takes my packages for me and I'm with him at the post office, nobody says anything to him, and he starts talking about Disneyland to everybody at the post office. Because he wants to be important. Everybody has an ego. Everybody wants to be important. And that's his way of being important. He likes talking to people. He likes people. He's a nice person. So, you see, I understand that knowing the chart, you know, and when I went and I told all these people, I said, look, this guy only has... The one girl, she had studied astrology at the church years and years ago, no longer, but she has a PhD, the one that thought he was retarded. And now I told her what was in the chart, and she says, oh, well, now that makes sense. He's just a slow learner. See, so how can you judge people? You could see somebody that you don't know acting this way, and you're going to judge them and think they're retarded or crazy or something's wrong with them. But if you don't have their chart and look and be understanding of them and what they're going through. So now what I have been doing with this guy, I'm working on his mind. I'm trying, you know, and we talk. Because he has a little tiny smart car, and he has that because he said, I want to be noticed. And he's a very big guy. Heavy, weighs 350, but this little tiny smart car. But he says, I want people to notice me, I want attention. Well, that's his only way to get attention. You know, so what? If that's good for his ego to have that little car and get attention that way, or to go to the post office or wherever he goes, he tells everybody about Disneyland. The last week he told somebody about some cannery thing that was free, that they could take their children and have free food and free sightseeing and all this stuff, and gave her a coupon. He didn't even know her. But that he's a kind person. He's a nice person. So you see, a lot of people may not understand a person like that. But we that know astrology and we have their chart, we know it. But if we don't have their chart, the Church of Light teachings, if you read the books and you don't even learn how to do a chart, just read Occultism, Applied Mental Alchemy, read the different books, you know, and learn the meanings of the planets and things that much if you can't set up the chart and do that part. And then you'll understand people when you go out and you meet people, so you can't belittle them or put them down or dislike somebody. Because how do we know whether somebody is able to cope with what they have going on, you know? So anyway, but I explained to him, I set him down, I showed him his chart, and I explained to him about his Mercury and his mind and not connecting, and he said, you know, that's right. I don't connect. I've never connected. And and I said, well, you connect with the movies, you learn visually. And he says, that's right. So now he's trying. Now he's watching the news so that he can talk to me about the news, but he watches it on the computer or on the video. But at least he's trying to do something about it, you know, little by little. So, but anyway, but it's not nice to treat people badly. There's so much cruelty in the world, you know. So anyway, and this guy, he tells me, he says, I'm a child. And he says, and I want to stay a child. He likes being a child. Well, if that makes him happy, who am I to take his happiness away from him? I don't take anybody's happiness away from him. You know, I used to date Joey Lewis when we ran around with Frank Sinatra and all. Joey Lewis was known for his drinking. And he had been married one time, and his wife tried to get him to stop drinking. You know, and I read the book, The Joker's Wild, which is his life story, which Frank Sinatra played in the movie. And I knew about the wife doing all that, and I was in astrology at that time, and I had his chart. So I never told him, don't drink. I never once said it. And so one time it came up, and I said, look, if you want to drink, I don't care. If it makes you happy to drink, I'm not going to take your happiness from you. Well, see, I didn't bug him. So what did he do? He stopped. He cut down all his drinking. There were times he didn't want to go out because his image, he had to drink for the public, you know, to see he was drinking. Then he had me watering in the restaurant. He would say, tell the waiter to water down the drink. So I had the waiter, because he didn't want to tell him, so I would tell the waiter, water down his drink, and they did. So he really, because I didn't use force, you see, I didn't push him. You know, I wasn't going to take his happiness from him, you know. So who am I to take somebody's happiness? And your horoscope is your attitude toward everything in life. And understanding astrology makes it easy to see and what makes others tick. Okay, so we can be understanding instead of critical of people, you know. Now, there was a friend of mine who, well, she wasn't really I have a friend that also has 3 planets. Well, she was born with the moon in Pisces in her 3rd house. And now her progressed ascendant is in Pisces in the 3rd house. And something went retrograde. It's in Pisces in the 3rd house. And little by little, her mind is getting senile, we'll call it, or Alzheimer's, you know. And so her sister is going crazy because her sister prints out things for her and she doesn't know where they are. She says she didn't print it out when she prints out stock market reports, maybe 40 or 50 pages long. And her sister's going crazy. I told her sister, I said, look, don't get upset with her. She has these Pisces planets and her mind is just wandering off into the clouds. So when I talked to her, I told her, not the sister, the one with the Pisces, the 3rd, I said, you know, you should take some choline. It's very good for your memory. And she says, oh. And, you know, Princess Yasmin was a client of mine, and she came to me one time, first time she came to me in New York. Of course, knowing astrology, you know, Neptune's involved with Alzheimer's, and choline is very good for Alzheimer's. I knew that, knowing astrology. And she came to me and she said, you know, my mother's Rita Hayworth and she has Alzheimer's. And I said, yes, I know that. And I says, well, and she says, I started the Alzheimer's Foundation here in New York. And she said, I said, oh, and I said, well, do you know that choline is very good for Alzheimer's? She says, yes, we found that out in research, that was the one main thing that was missing, was choline. You know. So you see, so I told this girl, the one with the sister, to take the choline and take mega doses of it, you know. So this is just a few weeks ago I told her about it because they've been out of the country. So, you know, this is what happens. Now there's another one. They asked me, there was a friend of theirs, I had done her chart once, and then she moved out of Las Vegas. She was coming back to Las Vegas to buy property. So they asked me if since I have a spare bedroom and bathroom, asked if I would let her stay there. I'd only met her once. I said, okay, you know, so while she was looking for an apartment. Well, I had Sun opposition Mars by major progression in at that time. And with my fourth of the home, of course it was in the 6th house and 12th, but the Sun rules my fourth. And that was in by major progression. Do you know that if it wasn't for the Church of Light teachings, I would have probably exploded 1,000,001 times. But I wasn't angry inside. I wasn't angry outside. I was trying to analyze her, figure her out. I had her chart. She's a Leo with Gemini rising, and she had some Virgo planets, 2 Virgo planets in the 4th house. And I thought, oh, when they asked me, I looked at the chart and I thought, Virgo planets should be nice and neat. You know, that'll be fine, you know. Well, anyway, but I didn't, and when she first was there, she was having trouble seeing things, and the dishes would be put in the dishwasher, would be put in dirty, so I said, look, you're the Leo queen, I am just your servant. I said, let me put the dishes in. I didn't want to get angry, and I didn't want her to get upset and hurt her Leo ego, you know. So I said, because I'm understanding of people, you know, you got to understand other people. So I said, let me put them in the dishes. I love putting them in. I'll fix them in. You just be the queen, Leo queen, and just stay right there, and I'll do it. You can do your little cooking, but I'll do the dishes. So that was fine with her. You know, she wanted to do them, and she tried a few times, but they were always dirty. And then she made slop messes all over, and then I had a little basket full of candies, mint candies and Ricola cough drops. So the mint candies she would eat, and they had wrappers. And I was finding wrappers all over my house, on the floor, down the hallway, out on my terrace, by where the laundry machine is, drying machine is. I found them on top of my typewriter. I found these wrappers all over, everywhere, and I wasn't eating them. And she'd come in, and you see, and she would do? She would open one up and put it in her mouth, and it would then drop the paper to the floor wherever she was. And you know, and I kept watching this. I'm trying to analyze everything, you know. And I finally found out what it what it was. Well, in her chart, she just had the moon with the 3rd house was square Neptune, but I said that's not it. And I found out that she had, from her friend that asked me to let her stay there, I said, gee, I've never seen somebody, so she'd mess up big pots, everything was dripping all over, everything was a mess. Nothing was neat. It was the worst slob. I had never seen a slob before. You know,
Don't hold back, Lynn.
I had never seen anything like it, you know. So, but I didn't get angry. I was trying to understand why she was doing all this. I didn't say anything to her. I just cleaned up after her, you know. And the only thing I said was the dish thing. So now I found out that she had had an accident and she had brain damage. And that was why, and her brain and that was a few years before she came to stay with me the short while she did. And so those few years had gone by, and she had forgotten mostly memory, and she'd forgotten a lot of things, and she wasn't connecting. The girl that knew her was telling me this because she was living out of town, but she talked to her every day, and then she was telling her about her brain damage and how she was having trouble figuring out things and coping, and was leaving things out and having this mental problem. See, so I said, well, that's it. Her brain is not connecting. When she puts it in her mouth, it doesn't connect to throw it in a waste paper basket. It disconnects. So I didn't get angry or upset because I was understanding. So, yes?
Do you suppose she was not like that before she had this?
I don't know. I didn't know her. I mean, I'd only met her for a reading one time when she came and had a chart done and left, so I didn't know her, and I thought, well, Virgo planets, 2 Virgo and the 4th of the home, that would be neat. So I don't know what she was like. She showed me pictures of her house that she had with beautiful statues, and it looked nice and neat to me, those pictures, but that was way before her accident had happened. So maybe she was okay, and maybe she did have, she did have brain damage, and she just was not connecting, And to this day, she still has trouble, I understand, connecting things, And she's trying to make a living, but she forgets things. I gave her things to help make her more money with her business she's doing, and gave her articles to read of things she could get into, trying to help her. But she'd mislay them. She left, when she left my place, she left a mess. And when you opened the door, and when she was there, it looked like the Hoarders, on TV. There was no room to walk in or do anything. It was a mess. So she could never find anything, and she left papers there and empty bottles there. She said she cleaned up, but she didn't. But I know I didn't get angry or upset because I knew about her brain and her mind, just that connection wasn't back again. So you see, it's good to and then so I never got angry, not inside or outside. No anger, I didn't hold it in. I just was trying to be understanding. Now, I could never have done that if I had not had the Church of Light teachings. Who could? I mean,
I bet you were glad when she was gone.
oh, I was glad. I was glad when she was gone. That's for sure. I was glad when she was gone, and I'd never let her come back again.
There you go.
But because it was too much work for me, I was busy cleaning instead of doing my own work. But I still was trying to understand about it. Now, then there's a lot of people who are very catty, especially women. A lot of catty women. There's a lot of people in astrology who are jealous of other astrologers and jealous. And when I lived in New York City, people would say, when I was teaching my classes there, my marathon crash course and the others, people would say, well, aren't you jealous that we're going to be an astrologer and give you competition? I said, no. I said, there's no such thing as competition in astrology. I'll tell you why. At that time, I lived in a building that had, well, now they have their own post office boxes. It had 3 buildings in one, and it had, I think, 1,000 apartments, high-rise. It was a big, big building. I said, look, I couldn't do everybody's chart in this building in 1 year's time. If I just saw one person in each apartment, I couldn't even get all their charts done. And there's a whole city out there. I said, so where's the competition? There is no competition. There's a need for astrologers. There's a need. And no one person can do everybody's chart in the world. So that's how I feel. I mean, so that's why I don't think that, but there are people who are jealous of astrologers and others, and are catty and gossip and talk about them, and they're only lowering their own vibratory rate. And I tell people, listen, don't feed into it. Just, if they talk about you, just bless them and wish them well, and be kind and be nice and smile away, and don't let it get to you or bother you. because that's their bag. That's not going to be yours. You're not going to feed into that and then you're miserable. You can't help it if somebody is catty, as long as you're not catty, you know. So it's good understanding things, you know. Even if somebody belittles you and puts you down, you say, oh, well, they've got an ego problem. That one needs to express his or her ego, and they don't know how else to do it. So they're picking on me. So that's it. So all you have to do is give them a little attention, you know. Like you can compliment people. You know, there's always something nice about somebody. You can say their tie or this or that or something that's nice that they're doing. So people like compliments because it gives you attention. And then they don't pick on you, you know. They leave you alone, you know. But there's always something nice that everybody has good in them, you know. Now it's like these people that go to psychics, for example. I have a lot of clients that like astrology. They like psychics. So they go to the psychics and they'll say, well, that psychic wasn't very good. Well, it has nothing to do. I tell them, I said, look, I don't have that psychic's chart or know the sun sign or anything about the psychic that you went to. But I have found out that if you're not compatible with the psychic, it's because of that you didn't get a good reading. It's not because other people told you how good the psychic was with them, right? Yes. Well, maybe they were compatible with that psychic and you were not. So maybe that is why you didn't get a good reading, because you weren't compatible. See, so, and that's true, because there's one good psychic in New York, and people that go, now she's very good with Cancer people with Cancer sun, or she's a Cancer ascendant, a Leo with Cancer ascendant, but she's very psychic with people, Leos and with Cancerians, or people with moon or sun or ascendant in Cancer. But if you send her a Libra or another sign goes to her, some signs go, they're not satisfied because they're not compatible with her chart. So that's another thing you have to look at. Maybe you don't get along with somebody because you're not compatible. So you can't put somebody down just because you're not compatible with them, you know. You don't have to be around them if you can help it, you know. But anyway, so it's very good to know and like on a job too with coworkers, that there's people that go to work on a job and they say, oh, I don't get along with my coworker. She's jealous of me or this or that or dictates to me or something. Well, if they have bad aspects in their chart, which a lot of them do with the sixth house, like Mars or Pluto aspects, then they're having trouble coping and they don't use the antidotes and try to get along with them, you know. I had one that was a supervisor, and she was having trouble with everybody who worked beneath her. And I told her, you know, right out, I said, well, you have the aspect in your chart, but I said, you're too hard on people, and you dictate to them and lord it over them, and I said, this is why you're not getting along. I said, try to give them a compliment, try to praise them, try to do better. So the next time I heard, she was in Japan working American, and the next time I heard from her, she had improved. She was doing better, but she was still having one problem, and that was the boss, but she was doing better with the team because the boss had told her that if you don't start getting people who work for you on your team beneath you, we're going to let you go. So that's why she was desperate, and she tried, and it worked. But then she had trouble with the boss, so I had to tell her how to handle that one. But you know, it's how you handle people. If you come on strong and you're mean and you do this and do that and do that, well, you're attacking people's egos, you're belittling people, you're using force and pressure, you know, people are going to rebel. But if you do things in a nice, kind way, you're going to get people, oh, like puppy dogs, doing things for you and working hard, you know. So it makes a difference. That's, again, knowing astrology is a very big help. Anyway, so I have learned through the Church of Light teachings that to get along with people I don't know in business or anything else or come into contact with, that if you're kind and sweet and charming and you try to use tact and diplomacy with people, you get along much further than when you get bossy and dictative, you know. But is all that bickering and strife and all that excitement you have, is it worth it? What does it do to your health? You know, what does it do to your body, you know?
Some people seem to like the strife and the drama.
There are
and
some people who like it, and they thrive under it, but don't they end up getting sick or having accidents and all kinds of bad things happen to them? Yeah. And so they wonder, why do I have all these
Right.
bad things happen all the time, you know? You need patience with people. That is a great word, is patience. It's easy. Being a Sagittarian, a fire sign, I learned patience a long, long, long time ago. I'm a very patient person because you have to be. It's not worth being impatient, you know? And anyway, so now the thing is, in a chart, as we all know, when the sun is afflicted, some people have an ego problem, and it may put people down or boss them and all of that kind of stuff. Now, to get along better with people, you know, like if you have clients, you have people and they're bossy, and if you start to get bossy with people, you're attacking their ego. And they're not going to sometimes even listen to you. But there's a way to get around that, and it's in the Church of Life books, I think. That's where I think I got it. Anyway, and that is, well, I'm going to put it in different words. Instead of making demands to people, demanding they do this or they do that or do it this way or do it that way, blah, blah, blah. If you say, what do you think about such and such an idea? Or you could say, oh, you're real smart. What do you think about doing it this way? Then the other person says, oh, he asked me. That means I'm important. So then you have a better chance of getting your way. So if you ask it as a question, instead of making a statement and a demand, you will get your way much better, you know? And that's a way to get around that. And then you feel good because you think, gee, that worked real good. You know, that makes your ego feel good, but you haven't attacked their ego. And you're making them feel important because everybody wants to feel important. Depends upon, you know, the house it's in, whether it's with the first house, your personal life, the second, some people, money makes people feel important, to throw away the money, you know, that. Some people with the third house, the telephone, they have the cell phones, have all kinds of things, but it might make some, or they write, you know, that might make them feel important. The fourth could be home and owning property. The fifth could be with your children, your love life. The sixth could be with your employees or with the labor you perform. You are proud of the way you do your work, you know, and how you do that work. The seventh could be with a marriage partner. You're proud of your marriage partner or business partner, or you're proud of your clients, you know. Or it could be the eighth house. You're proud you don't owe any money. Have any credit card debt, and you don't bother with the IRS, you know. Or your ninth house, you're proud of your travels or your teaching or lecturing or getting published or advertising you do. The 10th could be with your career. Getting publicity could make you proud and good for your ego, or getting a raise or a promotion. Like there's a lot of people who would rather have, you know, you can look at a chart and see whether somebody wants the title or do they want the money. Of course, with the sun in the 10th, they're going to want the title. The money's not going to be as important as the title is going to be, you know, because that's the ego being important, being the boss, running the business, being the administrator, and being in top spot, or owning a business. The 11th is with friends. Some people like to name drop or talk about their friends, or they want to be around powerful or wealthy, powerful people, and that's where their ego feels satisfied. Some get satisfied secretly behind closed doors, or maybe they donate money to charity, and that's good for their ego. They keep it secret. You know, so you see, everybody has the sun somewhere, and we have it ruling, Leo rules cusp of one of the houses on top of it. So you have the sun ruling two houses in the chart, unless you have Leo on the cusp and the sun and Leo in the same house, you know. But otherwise you have everybody. So we all have an ego. We all need compliments. We all need to get our ego satisfied in some way. But once you learn the Church of Light lessons, you see you really find out what's really important in life. You know, when I first started, I have 10th house planets, and I love the publicity. Now I don't care anything about it. I could probably call Oprah Winfrey and get a show on this type of show. She likes astrology, or a lessons on astrology show on her own network now. I don't want to be bothered. I don't care about the publicity anymore. I don't care about the fame, because I found out a long, long time ago, it's not important. Because the only way that publicity and recognition help you is if you want to help, like a charity cause, and you lend your name to it. Then because you have the name, like a lot of these celebrities, they have a name, and they have these charities, and people will donate to them because of who they are. So that helps with having a name. So just to have a name, it's not important. You know, it's just, well, I don't have the sun in the 10th house either. But maybe I would have, but it once it used to be important to me years ago, but it wasn't important for an ego reason. It was because I thought I could spread. If I had a name, I could go on TV and talk about astrology and the Church of Light and spread the word. So that's my Pluto and Moon and Cancer in the 10th house. So I guess that's why I thought that it was good. But now I turn down shows and everything. I don't care anymore. Yes.
What house is your sun located?
Fourth natal. They progressed in the 5th now. Slavery. Well, so now we will take the moon in the chart. The moon, so anyway, when the sun is afflicted and you see somebody talking out there, butter them up. Give their ego a boost. And you know, it's very interesting. People that have that, once you do that with people, they don't get that egotistical flair anymore. It's amazing. You know? And now the moon is the emotions, and the emotions can get you in a lot of trouble. The moods.
Yeah, sure kidding.
I once had a student in New York, and she was an Aquarian too, but she was I think she was Cancer. She had very strong moon and emotions. And what she did one time was, she had a flood in her apartment. So she called me while I had a client there. And she was crying and screaming and carrying on emotionally. Oh, there's this flood here. What am I going to do? My apartment is flooded and blah, 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 blah. Oh, tell me. I says, why don't you clean it up? You know? And she says, oh, and she hung up on me and she reported me to the American Federation of Astrologers for not being understanding. That's what she did.
I love it.
And they called me. It wasn't Robert Cooper at the time. It was Paul Grell, when he was the president of AFA. He called me on the phone. He says, Lynn, this ex-student client of yours called on the phone and told me. And I said, well, what was the person's name? And he told me. And he says, you wouldn't talk to her. And I said, well, I had a client there, and she had a flood, and I told her to clean it up. He says, well, what else could she do but clean it up? He agreed too. But it was going to put a bad mark against me. And I never heard from her again. But you see, that's letting your emotions getting away from you. You know, you can get so emotional about something that you don't do something about it, you know. And the emotions, I have seen so many people get ill with their emotions, you know. And of course it depends upon what sign it's in natally and by progression too, whether it's going to hit the Cancer, the stomach area, digestive tract, what. But sometimes they can get so emotional, you know. And of course Mars being the antidote would have been to clean up the mess that she had, you know, just clean it up. That's the Mars, you know. You get buckets and water, and you get the water cleaned up. You know, there's all the time we have floods, you know, they go on. So anyway, So now, if we look, but their mood swings can be changeable. You know, there's people you may live with, the Cancer planets, that have mood swings and all, and you just don't let it bother you. You just say, well, that's the mood for the moment. It will change. And you just don't let it bother you. You see, again, it's your attitude. Your attitude toward your horoscope, your attitude and your way of thinking. So I've had people stay with me that had a lot of Cancer rising stayed with me. My friend Ruth Brown, the singer, stayed with me 1.5 years. She's Cancer rising. And she wasn't in the mood to go. She was on Broadway at the time. She didn't feel like going to work that day because she wasn't in the mood for it. And she'd won a Tony Award for the show. You know, she'd won Grammy, she'd won everything. And she says, I'm not in the mood to go in, I'm not going in. So she stayed in her part of the apartment, I stayed in mine and went to work. And she got up and cooked. Cancer rising. She did, but I didn't feed into it because her moods would change later, you know. So you just don't pay attention to mood swings because it's an emotional mood swing, and it may not last. It'll change back. Just like Gemini risings, like this girl that stayed with me, she had Gemini rising, and she would tell me one thing, and I'd caught her in many lies. It wasn't the Gemini. The moon square Neptune was the third house. I can't remember if Neptune or the moon, one of them was in the third. Anyway, was in a square natally, and by progression she had Neptune galore. And that made her also absent-minded and forgetful and dropping the things too, you know, and not connecting. And she would tell me one lie, and then later she'd tell me something else. And so I let it in one ear and out the other ear, and I didn't pay any attention to it. And I'd just say, oh, that's good that happened, or good that you're doing that. Oh, that's good. And I'd go on my way, do my thing, and let it go. And then later she'd tell me a whole different story, and I said, oh, well, okay, that's good too. I just went along. Well, what else can you do? You know, you go crazy by listening to people change their mind or something, you know. So Jupiter, of course, the antidote to the Mercury, right? Happy-go-lucky. Oh, well, I don't care, so what, you know. Let it go, that's all. So you just don't get bothered. It's not letting things bother you. That's what's important. Now, Jupiter now, speaking of dear little Jupiter, can do things to excess. You know, Sagittarians can do things to excess. Jupiter does things to excess. So, what do? Well, we can be overly confident, you know, and be too trusting of people also, be fooled. Well, I don't know. I think that's not too bad of a trait, except just don't go for any con scheme or anything like that, you know. It's good to have Saturn be alert, but the thing is, Jupiter afflicted, yeah, you can get it. If you're an alcohol drinker, you can get cirrhosis of the liver, you know, which I had 2 friends die from that this year. And one was a Sag, the other one was not a Sag. But, you know, they drank and it bothered their liver, but they did things to excess, you know, with Jupiter was in, you know, the liver is Jupiter and was in both charts. So they did things like that to excess drinking. Well, that did harm them, you know. So that can harm a person, but is that going to harm you? I guess if you lived with them and they went on big spending sprees, it would, you know, going to excess. Or you could overeat, you could overdo things, you know. I had a, let's see, when was it? About 3 years ago when I had a hernia outpatient surgery operation. I have a very good Scorpion surgeon who's a Buddhist vegetarian and who is fascinated by my almanac on the surgery dates and wants to learn how I do that. That's unusual for a surgeon, but he's from Sri Lanka. And anyway, he gets the anesthesiologist. So, you know, he'd always, in the past, had gotten good anesthesiologists for me. So this time, I'm in the room and the anesthesiologist came in and he had Mickey Mouse thing over his head, doing jokes with people. So I asked him, I said, what sign are you? He says, Sagittarius. And I knew I had a Jupiter-Neptune square transit in that day with the 12th house. I said to him, look, because I knew he's Sagittarian, I'm Sagittarian, I do things my sister says to excess. So I said, look, I don't want an overdose of anesthesia. I have aspects in my horoscope for an overdose. Right now I'm sleepy, I don't need much to knock me out. Do not give me an overdose. Oh, no, he wasn't going to give me an overdose. He did. He did. And this is the first time ever that I woke up. They had to there were 4 nurses around me and doctors, and they had to put an oxygen mask on me. My sister and friend were waiting outside to take me home. They couldn't. I had to go to a room and stay till that night, all because of the overdose. But I knew from the transit it was in, but my other aspects were good, and I needed the surgery, so I did it. So I didn't tell the doctor about it for a few years till next time for surgery, and I said, just don't get that Sagittarian anymore. And he says, who is he? He says, oh, was he the guy that put Mickey Mouse up here? And I said, yes. I said, he gave me an overdose, and I said, I want you to get me somebody else. And he said, oh, he says, I don't use him anymore anyway. So he got me an Aries that was very good, you know. But that overdose, you see? It's if you know astrology. And I knew I was going to get an overdose, and I did. What can you do about it? Well, at least I'm alive. Not have surgery that day, but the aspect, that Jupiter-Neptune square was in for a whole month or so, you know?
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? Can you chance it or not chance it? The rest of my chart was good, so I chanced it, you know, knowing ahead of time. So you have to watch that. Now with Saturn aspect, well, Jupiter, Saturn, people who have Saturn, oh my gosh, I'm talking to people with Saturn afflicted all the time. All the time. Clients, people call on the phone, they are so negative. You can tell, some I don't even know, they buy books from me and they'll start talking, you know, and telling me their problems, and I don't have their chart or anything, but I can tell they're using Saturn energy, you know. So I try to tell them how to use it constructively. Either use the constructive side of Saturn, which I always say, take on added work responsibility, be so busy you don't have time to talk. If you don't have time to talk, when are you going to think? When are you going to have time to get negative? If you can't do that, Venus, the antidote, I says, take an interest in other people. I said, your problem could probably be that you have too much time to dwell on yourself, and you don't have time to think of other people. I said, you need to socialize, you need to get out and meet people. And they'll say, well, they don't have the money to socialize. And then I'll say, well, you could go to art, if they're in a big city. I'll say, well, they have art gallery openings, they have art in museums, you could go look at art. You know, that doesn't cost any money. Some of them are, the art gallery openings are free. Or you could do something artistic, or you could try to meet people, go to the senior citizen places and volunteer and meet people and socialize there, you know, with people and do things like that, you know. And but most of them find it easier because they don't have money to use the conversion, the harmonious side of Saturn, to work. But some of them, one girl told me a few weeks ago, she says, well, I work. And I says, well, what do you work at? And she says, oh, you know, with the computer, I look up stuff and do all that. And I says, well, you probably need, these are all done with email. I says, well, you probably need the thrill of accomplishment. You know, do something that you're thrilled at, that you accomplished. And I said, she's disabled, you know, she's on disability, but she can walk. And so she's not disabled that way. She can use a computer. I says, well, there's all kinds of jobs. I told her to study the Church of Light lessons. So she knows. I says, go to the Church of Light website. And I said, and look at their books. You need to read some of these books. Read Mental Alchemy. Read these books, because she knows a little about astrology, but not much. So that was the last I heard from her, was that she needed to get busy doing something instead of just having time to think about her misery. You get too self-centered. So, but if you see people like that, you try to help them. You try to give them advice, but everybody has a right to their own opinion and a right to do what they want to do. And you're not going to take that happiness from them, but are they happy being miserable? I don't think so. I think some people may be, but then they end up ill, and wonder why they're sick. And then you have Uranus. When Uranus is afflicted, you may find somebody late, especially if Uranus is in their first house. You might find they're late, they're unpredictable, they're erratic, they cancel dates, things like that. I have a client that always does that, and I never know. I had two, actually, and they were both late. They would cancel at the last minute, or they wouldn't show up, and I'd have to call and ask where they were. Oh, I can't come today. I didn't let it bother me. I had the chart. I knew that they were unpredictable, so I didn't let it bother me. Like if a man and wife are married, and let's say that the man had to work overtime on his job, and he and his wife were going to go out with friends to dinner or a party or something. Anyway, let's say, or even if he wasn't going out, they weren't going out, and he had to work overtime, and he didn't call because he thought, well, I won't be much longer. I'm not going to be that late, so he doesn't call. And then the wife is waiting and waiting and waiting. About 3 hours later, he shows up, so they have a big fight. But if she had his chart, she would know he's going to be late. He's got Uranus in the first house, or Aquarius rising, or something that's erratic, or a progression in somewhere with Uranus could cause you to be late and cancel dates and not show up or disappear. I've had a client that had this one girl was dating this guy, and everything was going wonderful with them. They didn't have an argument, nothing. Everything was going fine, and the next minute, he disappeared on her. Disappeared from out of left field. No reason. And she says, I didn't say or do anything wrong. I can't understand what it was. She had a Uranus progression in her chart, Venus-Uranus square. And he had disappeared and broke with her. I said, well, break up. He just disappeared on you. She later ran into him. She found out that he had lied. He was married and he lived 1 block from her. And later she ran into him. So then she knew what it was. Just don't get upset, because with Uranus, you never know what to expect, But it's great. And Jupiter is the antidote, so you can laugh it off, Oh, well, they're going to be late. He's going to be late. They're going to not show up on time or something like that. So you can have an optimistic attitude about it rather than getting angry. If this happens, with people. Or they, as I say, they can disappear. I had one client that was really strange. The girl was an Aquarian, and the guy, I don't remember what he was. They were madly in love, so it seemed. And everything was going perfect with them. Everything perfect. And the girl said to him, I am going to break up with you. And he said, why? And she says, because everything is perfect and I don't want to ruin what we've had. And out of her, that was the end of that. Remember, she went out of his life.
I don't want to ruin what we've had, so I'm going to break up.
Yeah, Barbara was.
We have a question from your online listeners, and one wants to know if you could touch on the anecdote to worry.
To do what?
To talk about the anecdote for worry.
For what?
Worry.
Saturn.
Oh, worry?
Worry.
Pisces, worry? Well, stop worrying. Get your mind on something else. Be positive. Use Jupiter. Don't worry. Just say everything will be okay. Trust in divine power to help you and save you. You know, do something. I don't know what else. I have Pisces progressions. I don't worry. I don't have time. You know, if you keep busy, you don't have time to get negative or worry or do these things. You know.
I have Pisces rising, and I find that I can trip into worries.
You can, yeah.
And so what I do is I go, okay, I think of everything I can do about it, and then I let it go.
Yeah, all you can do is let it go. Because I have my progressed Sun and progressed Venus now is in Pisces, my 6th house, so I don't worry. I just do my work and do it. But I guess it's what house it's in, because if it was your personal life house, it might be harder to use than I do with my work, you know. But I don't worry about things, maybe because I'm a Sagittarian, I don't know. But you just have to keep yourself busy and just know that everything is in divine order, it's thoughts produce things. And since the horoscope is your attitude toward everything, it's what you're telling yourself is what you attract. So if you tell yourself, oh, I'm not going to get this job, you're right, you're not going to get it. If you say, oh, I'm not going to sell my house, you're right, you're not going to sell it. Or I'm not going to capture this man, trap him, or whatever, you're right, you're not. Because thoughts produce things. It's what you're telling yourself is what is important. So you've got to stop and say, oh, so I'm worrying about something. Now, what am I telling myself? What am I worrying about? Okay, I'm going to let that go. I'm going to get busy. And if you're worrying about money, well, then get busy and try to get work. There's all kinds of work. The economy is bad, jobs are bad. But you know, I have heard from people in the recruiting business and other fields that there's a lot of work out there, and that a lot of people, they've got their unemployment check coming in, and they're too lazy to go see about getting work, and they're waiting till it runs out at the last minute, and then they go look for work and they can't get it, you know. And so there's a lot of jobs out there, believe it or not, but some people want more money than what the jobs are going to pay, so they just don't go see about them. And now, of course, the online job is harder to get than when you went in person, you know. It's all different age we're living in. But there are jobs out there, and I've been told that by people in the business. There's a lot of jobs and a lot of work. And I see signs in Las Vegas all over, want to hire somebody on doors of offices, buildings, and things. Their signs are still up, you know. There's jobs. Even the health store I go has a sign in the door for a month now. Nobody's gone there. You know, there's jobs. But people are either lazy now, or they take the easy way out, or they're getting their unemployment till it runs out. I've heard clients tell me, oh, I'm not going to go see about work until month. And I'll say, well, you've got a good aspect in your chart now to see about work. You shouldn't wait until your unemployment runs out, because then when is it going to run out? They'll tell me. I say, well, then the aspect is gone, you know. And they don't care. They don't care. So if they don't care, I don't care. You know, that's theirs. I try to help, and if I can't help them and they, you know, don't do something about it, there's nothing. Yes, Barbara?
She wants to know if it would be it could be Saturn energy, the worrying thing.
Well, it's like Saturn energy, only it's more emotional than Saturn, but it's still worry. Saturn worries, Saturn afflicted worries, you know, it's a worry planet. So you use Venus, or you go get busy and keep so busy. And if it's money you're worrying about, try to get work somewhere. There's delivery jobs. There's all kinds of different kinds of jobs that are out there. Or you could study the Church of Light lessons and keep busy with that, you know. Get some of the books, study. I told somebody that a few weeks ago that was negative over the phone. I said, why don't you study the Church of Light books? You have nothing else to do. You're at home, you're negative. I said, why don't you read the books? Get mental alchemy. It may be over their head, or occultism applied to daily life. Look and see what you're doing. Find the mental thought of what's there and what you're doing and what you should do about it. You know, but that's one thing. If you don't have, if you're disabled, then you could do that. Or if you don't like the pay that's out there and you can't get work, if you're in a small town, it may be harder to get work than in a large city, you know. So if they can't, they could study. Study positive thinking. Study things that will keep your mind off of you, off of yourself, and off of what your problem is. Or get off your butt and go to work. That's the best way. And that's the best way. That keeps you busy. Just be busy. Just be. I have never been depressed in my life and I have Saturn ruling my 6th house, but I work all the time. I always find, I go from one job, I never sit. I go from this job to that. I get everything done, and after 14 hours or 15 hours are over with, it's time to go to bed. The next day, start over again. But I go from one project to the next, to the next, to the next. So I don't have time to get negative. I'm always thinking, oh, there's more to do. I can reorganize things. And I haven't had time to reorganize things that I want to reorganize. You know, and things I want to give away. But I don't have time to do all that. I'm too busy. So there's plenty to do. You know, it's just that you've got to get yourself to doing it, you know. Yes?
Another question. What is the affliction with laziness in job search?
Well, Neptune and Venus can be very lazy, especially or Pisces or Aries or Taurus or Libra ruling the 7th can be lazy. Libra rising can get lazy at times. Depends upon the whole chart. But usually Neptune procrastinates and Venus will take the easy way out. But I've got Venus now in my 6th house. I'm not taking the easy way out. I'm using Saturn. And then Venus is not that afflicted. I mean, natally I had no bad aspects of Venus. So I'm using Saturn anyway. Which if I was going to get lazy, Saturn will take care of it. Just work hard, that's all. Hard work doesn't hurt anybody. You know, I have a series I do, well, it's now on my lesson tapes, called Wealthy People. And when I taught it in Houston, and when I taught it to my class in Las Vegas, and now I've got it on tape, lesson tapes, I have all these charts of wealthy people. And if you look, and I just dwell on how they got wealthy, not just because they have Jupiter maybe with the 2nd house, but you can see with every one of these charts, hard work was involved. All hard work. It just does not come to you. You have to work hard and you will get things. And all the millionaires, one time David Susskind years ago on his talk show, he had Richard Branson and all these millionaires on, and he asked them, what one word would you say would make a person successful in business? You know, what one word? And the one word was persistence. You know, which is Saturn, also can be Pluto. But persistence is the #1 key to success. Well, that's Saturn type of energy. And persistence, you don't give up. You keep on going. You know, like my almanac, when I first had the idea to do it, this friend of mine said, oh, that's not going to go. Don't do it. I said, no, I believe in it. And I've had people call and ask all these questions. And this way I can free my time up because it'll be in the almanac. So I did it. And I persisted with it. And so I have a lot of sales from it, you know, and it's helped people. You know, but the thing is, I persisted. You have to persist with things. It may take time for anything to catch on, but you can't give up. And all these wealthy people's chart showed they had persistence, they had Saturn energy, and all the hard work that they did. And one of the Church of Light books is the Kaiser chart. Did you ever look at his chart? All those Taurus planets are like 6 or 7 of them in the 10th house. Well, that was persistent. And he started, $1.50 a week when at 13 he left Boston or wherever, and he went down to New York and got a cash boy job and went to work as a clerk and $1.50 a week. That's Kaiser Aluminum, Kaiser Hospitals. That was Kaiser. See, but you look at his chart, you could see all the hard work he was doing. So work brings success, and it can bring success. You don't have to be a millionaire to be successful. You could be proud of your success, you know, proud of what you've achieved, you know. It can be all kinds of success. So anyway, now we will do Neptune. Neptune can procrastinate on the bad side. This is the bad side. It can talk big, you know, like, I had somebody call me a few weeks ago, and I didn't have his chart in front of me. I hadn't had his chart done in 9 years. And he called and he was saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, and oh, I'm going to learn astrology, and I'm going to get my chart done, and I'm sending the money tonight for my 2-year update, and I'm doing this, and all this very Neptunian talk. And I said, well, that sounds like Neptune going, I bet you he's not going to send that money in, and he's not going to get those lessons. And sure enough, he didn't. When I pulled his chart out, and I ran the Church of Life software, I ran his progressions off, Neptune was all over the place. So I said, well, there, see, without looking at the chart, I could tell by the way he talked that he was trying to con me or please me. You know, he's a nice person, you know, but I knew I wouldn't hear from him. So I put his chart back into the file cabinet. I knew he wasn't going to send it in, and he hasn't. You know, if he does, it'll be a surprise. If he doesn't, so what, you know. But, you know, Neptune, they talk big. You know, they're unafflicted, or they exaggerate, or they can get lazy and procrastinate. And some people can get on drugs, you know, a lot of drug addicts with the Neptune. And once years ago, there was a guy that came to me for a reading. He was the head, I think it was called Ceranon or something. It was the first rehab type of drug place that they ever had. Yeah, so that was it. And he was the head of it. And he came to me, and we were talking, and he was telling me what he was doing with these people. And he was doing the right thing. And that he wasn't giving them so much psychological counseling, but what he was doing, it was very Neptunian. And I thought, well, he didn't know astrology, and that was very interesting. He was getting them to use Neptune energy constructively. He was having them all learn how to play the guitar, different music instruments, and be creative in painting, and doing all Neptunian creativity. And they were all getting well from it. And it was giving them a vocation they could go out and do. So I thought, well, that was interesting. You don't hear of that in Betty Ford or any of the other rehab places that they go to. But I thought that was very interesting. He did that, you know. And it worked with Neptune. But Neptune people, Neptune are wonderful, though, for promoting, for wheeling and dealing, you know. It's just make sure you're not the one being wheeled. You know. But they're very good promoters, and if they have a good Neptune, you know, you can be very good at promoting, but Neptune can also get disappointed. You know, sometimes and I tell people when they have Neptune afflicted and they're promoting projects, whether it's projects for themselves or in a job they're working for, they have projects they're working on. I tell them, look, it could fall through because Neptune's afflicted, but even on Neptune harmonious it can fall through too, but not as likely, but it still can. And I tell them what you need to do is have, and especially people in real estate that have Neptune afflicted by progression, I say you need to have, don't wait for one deal, one client, one person. Have so many projects going, so many people you're contacting that if one thing falls through or one person doesn't come through, maybe the others will. Because that way they can help that way. And it's like the actors and actresses, they have Neptune. So they're waiting. And I tell them, I said, look, you have this affliction in your chart, or even if it's a good Neptune, I said, don't wait for, and they'll go and they'll say, oh, I just auditioned for this one part. That's the part I want. Well, what happens, they don't get it. Because it will fall through, because this is Neptune afflicted. They don't get it because but if they went to see about all different roles, and I said, just go audition for everything and take the first thing that comes up. And they find that they do better doing that than they do waiting for the one thing, you know. But it's you know, if you wait with Neptune, you could wait a long wait. You know. So it depends upon what you're doing and what houses it's in and how you're using the aspect too, you know. And sometimes I find that people with strong Neptunes are drama queens, so to speak. You know, they get very dramatic, and if they have the moon going with it, oh boy, they can really get dramatic and exaggerate and get carried away and emotionally carried away with things, you know. And there was recently, I have a client in Las Vegas that works for a well-known performer there who wanted his chart done, but he doesn't know his time because he was adopted and he hasn't been able to get it. And so she said, well, maybe you could rectify his chart. So she started telling me his different characteristics of what he was like. And I says, well, he sounds like a drama queen. He's a gay guy, too. And I said, he sounds like a drama queen. She says, he is. Because he runs the show. He is in the show, the star of it, but he owns it and produces it. And backstage, if everything's not going right, he gets dramatic and emotional about everything, you know. So anyway, I haven't done the chart yet. But anyway, but there's your drama queen. So you just go along with it. It's the best way. Saturn's the antidote to Neptune, though. Hard work. Never hurt you. Now, Pluto was the last. A lot of people have problems with the dark forces. There's a very good book by the Church of Light called Imponderable Forces that explains that very well, you know. And I tell people to read it. Oh, I have people calling there's voodoo on me and all this being done on me. And oh, I've been a waitress when I was in a restaurant where I go, she says, there's voodoo being worked on me. I says, voodoo? No, it wasn't a waitress, it was a waiter. The Mexican restaurant I go to, and I've known him for years. He says, what do you do about voodoo when it's being worked on you? Well, you see, if you can keep yourself on a high spiritual level, if you're up here and the dark forces try to come in, they can't reach you because they've got to get spiritual and come up to your level to reach you. And they're not going to come up there. So as long as you stay on that high level of spirituality, Church of Light teachings, doing good for the universal welfare causes and all of those kind of things, you stay on a high level. And usually, I remember Doris Chase Doan telling me that when you first get into astrology and you start studying it and going at it in the Church of Light teachings, that the dark forces will come around. So I learned that long ago. Keep yourself elevated on the higher level so that they can't attack you, you know. But there's a lot of people out there who, well, now with the economy, there's a lot of burglaries and robberies and all that kind of stuff going on. And but you try to stay as spiritual as you can, and you try to be busy. I think reading the Church of Light books is one of the best ways to avoid problems, you know, with the dark forces, you know, and trying to live a constructive life, doing good for other people and helping other people, you know, that is a good way to use Pluto. Of course, you could use the antidotes, but I think that you've got to really keep your act together there, you know. And Pluto is one of the rulers of astrology, too. Yes?
I'm reminded of a phrase I heard years ago that I could never forget. Love pushes up anything unlike itself.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's one way to look at it.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it.
Or purifying the dark forces.
Yeah. Loving people, helping, and, you know, if I see people that are, well, I don't see people really angry or mean or narcissistic with me. I haven't seen it, but others have it and tell me about it. But then you look at their chart and you can see that they are attracting this too with their own chart and the way that they are acting toward other people. It's like I remember once Doris Chase Doan and I were in France. The first time we were there, everybody was nice. The French people were very nice. And Doris said, you see, when you're nice to people, they're nice to you. And she says the French people, I didn't see that they hate Americans. And I've never seen it any time I've been there. And we didn't see it. They were all friendly, all nice, you know. So I think that works, you know, just try to be nice to people and that. So it's very important to understand people and what they are all going through. Anyway, now what I wanted to do, we're running a little late here. I got a little carried away. What I want to say is that some cultures, and I read this in a book recently, a travel magazine. Some cultures believe that if someone dies, someone has to open the window so that the individual soul can depart. We should not laugh at that, because everyone is entitled to their beliefs as well as their opinions. We should not make fun of people just because we don't understand them, or because we may believe differently than another. We shouldn't think we are better than they are, or put someone down. Instead, we should understand our differences and ultimately love our differences. Where is Christopher on that one? We are all different. Even twins are different. If everyone was the same, wouldn't it be a boring world? Boy, it would really be. So, anyway, even there's so much cruelty in the world, like hate crimes, and people don't like the gay people. They don't like the Jewish people, or the blacks, or the brown, or the Spanish. There's so much hate, And if you looked at a chart, I remember one time I was at a AFA convention, and Catherine, New Jersey, was giving a lecture, and she asked me to come to it. So I was there in the audience. She was a very good astrologer lecture. And somebody in the audience said, "Oh, Pluto rules the black people." They told her that.
That must have been a long time ago.
It was. and so she said, "Lynn, could you answer that?" And so I stood up and I said, "If you looked at a chart, you can't tell whether it's a dog, any kind of an animal, or whether it's black, white, yellow, brown, or what color anybody is. Everybody has a soul. We all have a soul. And, even the little animals have a soul, and people are cruel to them, I could tell you a funny story about my pigeons that I had. It'll make you laugh. I have a terrace where I live on the 9th floor. And I'm in a corner, and the other apartments can't see what's on my terrace. Now they can't. And I had to for the pigeons, I had to get big, tall plants in big pots all the way around. So the pigeons started coming over. Well, first I found a twig, and I threw it out. I didn't know about nests. Now I know all about pigeons. But anyway, I threw the twig out. Then the next day there was another twig, and I said, "Gee, I wonder if this is how could this fly here?" And it was in the back. So I watched. Pretty soon there were more twigs. Then I saw this one pigeon come over. They were building a little nest by my water fountain. And I called him to count. He was about this big. I figured him out. He was a Taurus. He minded his own business. He was henpecked. I found out later. Anyway, his first wife, Sylvia, I called her Sylvia. She was the one that made the little nest, and I put out some bird food for him, pigeon food and seeds. And then she came over, and I could see I have glass sliding doors. My bedroom and that was my bedroom side, and my living room is the other side. The glass sliding doors with a screen. So I could watch them. It was like living with them. So he came over, and she came over, and I sat on the eggs. They didn't hatch. She could hardly walk. She was old, an old pigeon. She must have died. Because pretty soon the Count was what I called him, would come over, and he would be all by himself, and he'd sit on the railing, mind his own business, wouldn't eat very much food, and that would be it. Well, that was in the month of June when he first came. In July was when she left. Late August, he came over with another pigeon that big. She must have been an Aries. Not because of her size, but her behavior. This big. I called her Sonia. So she came over, and I analyzed even the pigeons. Well, anyway, so she came over, and he was courting her. I even learned 3 different things in pigeon talk. And he was courting her, and she was playing hard to get. So she would run away. she'd leave him there, and he would call and mate for her, and she wouldn't come back. She would not come back. This happened like 3 times in a row. Finally, they got married. Now they're going to have children, and they've always made decisions together. I guess they weren't afraid of me. They were wild pigeons. So I have out on my patio, terrace, I have a marble table, wrought iron legs, and I have wrought iron chairs with these green seats in them that you can take out and wash if they get dirty. So the green velvet seats look like velvet. And so they were on all the chairs. So they came over, and you could see them together. They flew to the chair behind the table. They had to fly under the table. They flew there, and they together was making the decision. And they did this every time for 2 years I had them there. They would go together. She wouldn't make the decision without him looking it over, and you could see they were both looking the chair over and if that would be a good nest place. And every month they had babies. So every other month they were on the chair. Every other month they were down on I put a basket down there with little nest egg. I even bought twigs for, and I took pictures of her flying with the twigs. She would dump them down, messy, sloppy. He'd make them nice and neat in a little circle around. And then one time there was a big pot there, and they liked dirt, and he was little, so she had her feet on the ground, and the terrace floor was a green floor, and she was bent over eating the dirt, so he had to jump up onto the pot in order to get down into the dirt. He was little. So he got down, and all you could see was his tail standing up. So when he didn't eat much, he was never had an appetite much. She had a big appetite. So then, as he turned around, his tail hit her in the face, but he had to turn around to jump off of the pot. That's only because the screen was there, the rail, he couldn't go any other way. And he couldn't fly from there. So he jumped down, and she bit his tail. And he turned around, and he looked, and see, they have feelings and emotions like people. And he looked up at her so startled and shocked with expression. So and the first baby was born Francis, and was born a Scorpio, 2 Scorpios. And I was in my bed, and I heard, now I know the pigeon call when the father's proud of the rail, tailing the world that he's having a baby. And I ran around to the other side on the chair, and I saw Francis coming out of the shell. I wrote down the time, so I have the horoscope of Francis. Yeah, and I got one other's horoscope. So and the ones that left, now the Scorpios left the nest early, and then one Sagittarian, the other egg didn't hatch. No Capricorns, she missed that one, but the Aquarians came. They left the nest right away. The Angel, the Pisces, stayed a little longer than the rest, and she finally kicked them out. And then came the Aries. They left the nest right away. Then there was a Taurus that left. Gemini had left. And then Jamie the Cancer was born. And Jamie was this shows the emotions you can see on a pigeon. Their actual feelings and face and actions were typical of the sign. Jamie, you see, pigeons cannot fly for 6 weeks. So when they're up on that chair, they can't get off of the chair, and the father sits on the nest during the day and the mother at night. And so the father would be there, but then once Jamie, a few weeks had gone by, the food, Cancer, remember, was down on the floor here, hidden so that people outdoors couldn't see it. And Jamie kept looking and watching them all eat the food. Well, see, they have to be fed by their beak to beak, for a while, 6 weeks or more. So Jamie kept looking at the food. Now they can't fly for over 6 weeks, and so finally Jamie jumped down, couldn't stand it any longer, didn't wait the 6 weeks, jumped off of the chair, could not get back up because she couldn't fly. So she's down there. Watching them all eat. She can't feed herself at that point, so she stayed down on the floor. Then when it gets time for them to learn to fly, the mother and the father, they set them up on the rail, and for 3 days they watch all the pigeons flying in the air. They got to get a little power so they can glide and everything. So What does Jamie, so Jamie doesn't want to leave the mother. She's stuck to her mother. When her mother ate, she ate. When she finally could eat on her own, she'd go eat with when her mother ate. When her mother went this way, she followed her mother. She stayed with the mother all the time. And one time when she could eat on her own and all, she put her beak into the mother's beak. And the mother, wants her out of the nest in a way, and was doing this. She hung on. So when you see a pigeon go in a circle, that means they're confused. So Sonia goes in the circle like this, and Jamie went right with her in the circle, didn't let go. Finally, she shook her loose. Now the father is sitting over on a nest, having the other eggs that he was sitting on the floor. They never go to another pigeon's nest. I mean, even those siblings. They only go to their own nest. Jamie couldn't get the attention from the mother. So Jamie went over to the father and tried to put her beak in the father's. He wouldn't allow it. He's sitting on the egg. He wouldn't allow it. And then the next thing you know, Jamie got into the nest with the father and cuddled next to him. And that was Jamie, a true Cancerian. wouldn't leave the nest. I mean, so you see, and then what happened? They would find the people were getting. But then the first pigeon went and told had a lot of planets in the house of friends, and went and bragged. Sun was there. All that eagle was there. Went and told the friends about where there was some food. So the other pigeons that didn't belong to that family came, and they were always chasing. Sonia was always chasing the pigeons away. The count, he never did anything. He didn't bother. And I have a photograph that shows a picture of them with, now remember, he's little, she's big, on the rail, and she got tired for 2 years. Even when she was ready to drop an egg, she chased the unwanted pigeons away that weren't her family. And she finally got tired of it. And I have a picture of her looking down at him with her foot going this way. He was henpecked, by the way. And he's looking up at her sheepishly, like scared to death, with his foot wanting to go ahead but afraid, and he's just holding it like in midair, and she's telling him off. She is telling him he's got to go and chase the pigeons away. And she turned around, and she had long legs with bloomers, and she walked off of walked to the end of the rail. He turned around, and for the first time in 2 years, he chased the other pigeon next to him away. It lasted 1 day. That was it. Anyway, the neighbors, the office manager found out she hated pigeons, wanted to kill them all with a BB thing. And I said, oh, and this one girl in the office said, oh, it's Lynn's aura. That's why they're going there. I didn't say I was feeding them. To this day, they don't know. They're not there anymore. But anyway, so she ended up, when I went to Europe and I came back, my sister was there. I knew they were going to put a net up so pigeons couldn't come into my terrace. And my next door neighbor came to me and she said, you know what they've been, and I kept wondering why I found a lot of dead pigeons on my terrace. There were, and I had to throw them out, downstairs out and everything. There were so many dead pigeons, like 12 altogether over the period of time. That was near the end. And it wasn't any of the family, because they would never go to anybody else's terrace. They would only go to my terrace because that was their home, And these others were going to other people's terrace. And I found out, the woman next door, my neighbor, she told me that the office wanted to put poison seeds up there and try to get them over to my terrace. But they couldn't do it. And so they had these poison seeds on other people's terrace, and those other birds were going there and being killed. And that's the cruelty of people. But these pigeons, you could see their emotion in their face, their feelings. And one time I was cleaning out there, they let me clean. They didn't. And Sonia walked in my apartment. My door was open. She walked in. She didn't mess up. She looked all over. She looked around at the whole inside of the apartment and walked right back out. And they never messed up. So you see, there's so much cruelty in the world between human beings and with animals and the pigeons and all of this, but they all have, everybody has a soul, everybody has feelings, everybody has emotions. So anyway, if we are learning to love and understand our differences, we can live a more harmonious and peaceful life, as well as contributing our utmost to universal welfare. And that is it.